Why, hello, Healing Trauma Mamas. Welcome back to the podcast. Thanks for joining us today. I know we've had a little bit of a break on the podcast recently. That's just because lots of mamas and babies lately. So, trying to get schedules lined up when I have to cancel a lot and reschedule just sometimes doesn't work. So, today I'm really thankful that I was able to have a special guest that I've been looking forward to for a while having on the podcast. I actually heard about her through a book that I had read that a friend had recommended called Think Differently, Live Differently. And when reading that book, I loved it so much. I was very excited about it. I wanted to share with a friend of mine, Dr. Ben, you guys have heard me talk about before. And I went to share with him, and he said, I've already talked to them. In fact, they're coming out on my podcast. And when I got to listen to his podcast episode, I got to hear Polly talk. And that's Bob's wife. And I was really thankful to get to hear a little bit about her on that podcast. And I knew immediately that I wanted to reach out to her to see about coming to share on Healing Trauma Mamas. I feel like she's got some very valuable insights and has an amazing journey. And I'm really looking forward to getting to talk with her today. So, with that being said, Polly, do you mind introducing yourself?
Hello, and thank you for having me on here. That's so fun. I love hearing the track of how we all connect because I love how God's so clever and how he connects all of us in just different beautiful ways. And so my name is Polly Hamp, and I am an author and a trauma recovery coach. I am also a licensed NLP master practitioner, which is neuro-linguistic programming, is one of my tools that I use to help um, people really heal from trauma. As of right now, I see clients a couple of times a week. Um, and then I'm shifting into a new health initiative that I'm really excited about, just really mind, body, and spirit connection.
Mm-hmm.
But my passion is to help men and women find freedom and really find wholeness. I come from a background of pretty high level trauma, sexual abuse, and all that, and I've I've always wanted to believe that you can fully heal, and I hadn't really experienced the full true healing until probably 3 to 4 years ago. And I'm like, oh, you can truly heal. Like, it doesn't mean I'm not gonna have hard stuff, but now I can navigate it in a different way. And it's like I've always wanted to believe it for myself and for my clients, but then it's like, oh, this is a real thing. So that is a little bit about me. And I know we'll probably dig further into the questions that you have for me or whatever we get to discover about
Yes.
each other today.
Absolutely. Well, I don't know how much you know about me and if you've got the chance to listen to the podcast at all, but some of the similar things here, lots of different types of traumas and some very high level traumas myself. And I would say probably about 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago now for me as well, I didn't know you could actually fully heal
Mm,
from like when you look at a lot of the pathways to working through healing through trauma and you go and look at all these different you know steps I guess to take. It never actually means like everything that I have seen and learned from different people, like it's never fully gone. It's always like, okay, this is how you work through it and this is how you still, and then when it comes up again, this is how you deal with it, and all that type of stuff, which is great steps to help us somebody's in the process. But I didn't know that no, you could actually have complete healing. Like you can actually not look back at that stuff at all anymore and it not at all come up and not, and even if like somebody's asking like on the podcast, sometimes I end up having to talk about it again.
mhm.
That is not at all like there's no high emotion. There's nothing tied to it anymore.
Yeah.
It's just part of my story, but it's not part of who I am. And that has been tremendous for me as well. So I love that you have got that as too.
Yeah, I think it's an important message for us to understand because there is the camp of, well, it's like you're just always going to have this. You're always just going to have anxiety, so learn how to manage it. You're always going to have depression, so just learn how to manage it. And, I think it's more of a safety net for people to go, well, just in case I don't heal. And I
Yep.
think, if our brains, if we keep telling ourselves, it's not possible, or we just keep a question mark in there, what if we shifted our thought processes into going, there is a high possibility that I can fully heal, and that's what I'm going to look toward. And I'm not going to be sad. Like, I've got scars. I've had like emergency C-sections. Like I've got the cute scar from belly button to pelvic bone because I had twins and all that, and they had to get them out really quick. And the scars don't go away, but the story, like you said, doesn't have the charge. And so
Right.
I think there's that beautiful, just that hope that we can have of going, okay, it's still a process. There's still steps. Like there's still the things that I get to participate in in moving from, being fearful to hopeful, from trauma to wholeness. And it's still a process. However, if we can think, I don't have to live with anxiety. Like my clients come in and they're like, "Hey, can you teach me how to just manage my anxiety?" I'm like, "Absolutely
Mm.
not.
Yep.
No,
I like it.
we're going to get rid of it. That is that's the ultimate goal. Like we're going to
Yep.
get rid of it. And whatever, like I'm going to give you tools of how to ground and how to, if you do have a panic attack or you have an anxiety attack, like I'm going to teach you how to navigate that. But each time you train your body how to heal, then your body knows that it's actually possible, even in
Mm.
the moments of the hard stuff. And so I love that, like, you've had that experience, because I think as we have the culmination of people who can tell their stories from a place of a memory and not from a current like pain, PTSD, which is a real intense, like you go into a
Oh
trigger,
yeah.
it's like you're in the memory, and it's like honoring those places and helping people feel safe in that space, but being able to now tell it from a place of a memory instead of pain.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, with that being said, do you want to share a little bit about your journey of how you got to this place to be able to be like, hey, no, you can have complete healing from that?
Yeah, absolutely. And so um the journey was, let's see here. I'm just going to do a high level of the story, because it started, the earliest memory I have of sexual abuse started at 3, and then it stopped at 8. However, I very much took over. This is how I thought what love was, and instead of being introverted, I was incredibly extroverted, hypersexual, drugs, alcohol, at a young age, all that kind of stuff, just looking for the numbing and thinking that that is how you get love. Like when you don't know any different, you don't know any different. And so really, really destructive behavior through, late elementary school, junior high, high school, then getting into college, very destructive behavior. And the first real kind of, I had gone to some counseling in high school. At that time, though, I was atheist, and I had some hyper religious family members who tried to save me. Like, if you don't come to know the Lord, you're going to burn in hell. And I'm like, um, no. It's like I already live in hell, so I'm okay. It's like
Yeah,
I know this is my familiar, and if your God's going to burn me in hell, why would I want to know your God? And so, atheist, however you want to describe that. And also it was kind of a um, when you're young and it's like, ooh, that ticks people off. It was kind of that thing too. It's like,
yep.
getting that attention, and it's like I
Mm-hmm.
can't push the buttons, especially we live in Texas in the South, so kind of what are we, they call it we're the buckle of the Bible Belt.
That's right.
Yeah. So so all of that, but when in college I tried to take my life, because had I had gotten myself into a lot of just sexual trauma, but I was stripping in college, and it it was this thought when I went into college that if I can control men, like this is my turn to control men, and I can say yes or no, and they're going to have to pay me for it. And it was literally the pit of hell. And by especially up to 90, the statistics say 90%, but the women that I've worked with that have come out of or been in the sex industry, any part of it, porn, um, stripping, being prostituted, OnlyFans, all that kind of stuff. Up to 95% of those women um, have been sexually abused as kids
Mm-hmm.
because there's this twisted, distorted view of what love is and what sex is, and control and manipulation and coercion and all that.
Yeah.
So I after 2 years of dancing and being prostituting my own self, it was like I did not want to live. And so I
Mm-hmm.
tried to take my life. Um, and at the time, I didn't know what stopped me. Now I know it was God. Now I know when I was sitting in the parking lot with the gun, like it was God saying, no, not now. And it's like you you are designed to live. And so I went into a halfway house, stayed there for several weeks. Still, AA was introduced, things like that. But, it was a higher power presentation. And so if I got to pick my God, then I'm God. Like that was my
Mhm.
mindset,
Right.
right? And
Yeah, that makes
so,
sense.
yeah. And so it was, even though it's still getting kind of my toe into understanding that there's something greater and bigger than me, if I got to pick it, then it was me
Right.
in charge of that instead of me surrendering to God. And so I never danced again. However, that was kind of my really first, how would you say it? First experience in intensive healing.
Okay.
And I wasn't ready, but it was a start. And so, with trauma, with people who have high level trauma, a lot of the things that I've experienced for myself, but also the people that I work with, is just high level compartmentalization. It's
Hmm.
like we can compartmentalize our lives because that's how we have to survive. It's like, okay,
Right.
I'm gonna put this in a box, and I had pretty much a warehouse full of of my life. It's like put this in a box, put this in a box, put
Yeah.
that in a box,
Lots of them.
lots of boxes. And when I turned 23, out of college, I didn't finish school because after that episode, I left school, did some other things, but I was still very wild. But then I ended up getting pregnant and pregnant with twins. And I married the man that I got pregnant by. And we I compartmentalized my whole past and put it to the side. And then I became a stay-at-home mom and a wife,
Mm.
and very opposite of my
How did
wild
you, yeah,
life.
how did you deal with that? Like how did that feel to you?
It was it was so I loved being pregnant and I loved being a mama. Oh my gosh.
Mm.
It was so hard. I didn't find out I was having twins until I was 5 months pregnant.
Wow.
And because back then,
Right.
sonograms were really expensive. And I was young, and my OB, she was just like, you're young, you're healthy, you're fine, unless we see anything that we need to look at.
Yeah.
And so, and then one day, 5 months into the pregnancy, um, she measured me. She's like, "Oh, well, you're measuring a little large. Let's just look and see." And she was so cute because she had been my OB forever. She had been through all of my crazy. And and she was like, "Oh, I didn't think to look for a second heartbeat, Polly." And she's like, I in because yeah,
Well, you know.
not a bad thing on her. She's like, we found a heartbeat. There you go. And we weren't doing a sonogram. So it wasn't like, two showed up. And so
Right.
2 months later, at 27 weeks, they were born. They were doing twin to
Wow.
twin transfusion. And
Oh, darn.
yeah, and the doctors, they were like, they did a high, like, I can't remember the type of sonogram, but they're like, we need these babies now. And pretty much it seemed like, I'm pretty sure it was very quick, but I always say 30 minutes. Um they had me prepped open and they had the babies out of me. Like it was
Wow.
so
Wow.
quick. And and this is when God, like when I started seeing God, because they
Mm,
weren't supposed to live. Um
mm,
they were uh they were about what one of them, because she was the one receiving all the blood and food and fluid and all that.
right.
She was very swollen. She was about 3 pounds when she was born.
Mm,
Um, my other daughter was 2 pounds. And so the one that was swollen, she had heart failure. They both had severe brain hemorrhaging. And the doctor said if they live, they're going to be severely mentally, physically challenged.
mm,
And that's just devastating news. Devastating news. And it's kind of like that thing of going, well, I deserve this because I'm such a bad
mm,
person.
mm.
And uh but God kept showing up. And if you were to meet my daughters today, they're 28 years old, crazy. And they're 28 years old and you can't even tell that they were premature.
Wow.
Like when going through all of this stuff, they were in the NICU for 7 weeks. And every progress, everything that they kept doing, like the neurologist, and they're like, we like your kids,
Yeah,
like,
just 7 weeks. Wow.
yeah, yeah, 7 weeks. And
That's amazing.
it was incredible. And they were like, we like their healing was incredible. And so
Mm,
I remember going to their year and a half neurology appointment. They scanned their brains, and the neurologist came in and he's looking at the, the old scans to the new scans, and he's like, I'll be right back. And we're like, gosh, and he comes back, he's like, I had to check the files because, and he said this, he's like, I don't believe in God and I don't believe in miracles, but I cannot explain your children. And I'm like, okay. And so between that, and I had a precious mother-in-law who, like, good old Southern Baptist woman, but like she loved me. She knew I had a hard story. She didn't know all of my story because I did
yeah.
not share it, because you don't go around telling people you used to be a stripper.
Right.
And like, and you just don't talk about that stuff until you do. Um, but she just loved me and she showed me God through her
Mm,
love. And then God showed me him through the healing of my daughters. And so
wow.
I, in October of 99, when my girls were 3 years old, I came to know the Lord. And it was, that's probably the start of the true healing.
Mm,
Like, because
that's awesome.
it's really helpful to have the Holy Spirit in you with
Yes.
healing and all that. So
Completely agree.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. That's
So,
amazing.
so just kind of
So
go ahead.
no, I was just thinking, did you deal with, because it's mostly moms listening to this and we've gone over a lot of birth stories and stuff. So I have to pause for just a moment to talk about, twin to twin transfusion and C-section, which is obviously very warranted. Twin to twin transfusion is whenever basically one of the twins is taking all the nutrients. And so one will gain a lot of weight and look really great and healthy, and the other one is basically like a runt, they're not getting hardly anything, they're getting the leftovers. And if that is too high of a percentage between the two of them, like you gotta, the only way to fix it is delivery. So I can't imagine though, like suddenly finding out you have twins and then very shortly after, like then delivering twins, so not only having to have a C-section and go through that, but having to be a NICU mom and then suddenly coming home with two babies that was not expected at all, way sooner than expected and double what you were expecting. So I can only imagine what that first year may have looked like for you, because with all of those, any one of those things could have you've been at high alert for like postpartum depression. But with all of those things combined, I just wonder like how did that go for you?
Great question. I always say, I don't know. I don't remember.
Yeah.
And but they're alive.
There you
So
go.
yeah, they somehow they survived and we're all here. But in setting the joking aside, it was very traumatic. It was, coming home, my then husband, he traveled all the time. And so he went back to work, and I would be going up to the hospital every single day,
Oh,
also pumping, just it, I would say it, I was in survival mode. It's
yeah.
like you just go and you do what you have to do.
Yeah.
And, I remember one time, I know I had postpartum, um, and I think getting up and having to go to the hospital was helpful because it would pull me in, like I had to do stuff. And so,
Right.
I think having those things that I had to do, it wasn't at the level because I know I've worked with some women that like completely shut down and they were paralyzed by
Yeah.
just the weight of the postpartum. So it was, having to first heal from the C-section because it wasn't the cute little bikini cut, not that any of them are cute, but
Oh.
it's the belly button to pelvic
Oh
bone
yeah, yeah.
one because the daughter, her name's Ryan, she was stuck to my uterus because she was so emaciated when she came out. And then Natalie, she looked like a tick about to pop. It's a horrible description, but she was so swollen. Um,
Wow.
and so just the fear of that, and then all the procedures, and then my then husband, who was then had to go back to work and travel. His office was in Arizona. We lived in Dallas, and because he's having to work. Um, but I remember one time, I was pumping and exhausted, and I was boiling the all the elements. I don't know if we do that now anymore. I don't think my daughter even does that with her two littles, but I I dry boiled them and almost set the house on fire because I
Mm.
was so tired and I was so just yeah, all of a sudden I'm like, what is that smell?
Oh
And
man.
I open up the bedroom door and just engulf black smoke. And I remember standing in the front yard while the fire department, like I just put the lid over the flames, and then the fire department came out and they're blowing out the house with the big fans. And I'm just sitting there, standing in the front yard, just like glazed over. And one of the firemen's like, you need to be more careful. And I looked at him and I'm like, okay. You need, I know that. It's like,
Thanks.
yeah, thanks for that, Dad.
Mm-hmm.
Please go. Just air out
Yeah.
my house, leave me alone. But I it was survival mode. I ended up one of the things that I did do that helped kind of pull me through it is I had early childhood intervention, ECI, and I don't know if ever where that might be, but it was a program that these two women would come out and work with my girls,
Mm-hmm.
um, just physically and things like that. And that helped tremendously, having just people coming in and meeting with me and helping me. And then of course I had family in and out, but my family, like dad, mom, grandparent, my in-laws, just they all worked. And so during the day, it was just like survival mode. But
Yeah.
then I also joined the early PTA. I know there's so many other things, but in Dallas, there was a great early childhood PTA. And I met some really wonderful women through that. And I
Mm.
wasn't going to church yet. I had had some bad experiences with churches that we had tried to go to, but it was that I helped me kind of stay above water. But I was not dealing with any of my trauma. Like it was full on. I now have two babies, and they came home with heart monitors. They both came home at 4
Mm.
pounds. They came home with heart monitors. And when those heart monitors go off, like It's the
Wow.
most terrifying sound and like so loud. But then, of course, then you're like, their heart stopped. You have to make sure, now the sound usually would start the heart right back up because it was so loud. But, just all of those things. And literally it was all about survival. And it was probably a total of 3 years of survival. Clearly
Mm.
it changed a little bit because you go from, tiny infants to toddler and all that kind of stuff, but it was all survival. So for
Yeah.
the mamas out
Literally
there,
just trying to keep these little ones alive.
exactly. Yeah. And
Yeah.
myself. And like
Yeah.
and and so with the trauma, it's you know one of the things I would love to say to your mamas um is that with trauma and then having littles and being in survival, be really kind to yourself. I
Mm.
was not kind to myself. I shredded myself. I had incredible guilt. Like, what did I do to have twin to twin transfusion? Which, from what I understand, like there's nothing like it's not like, oh, you took this medication or you exercised too much or you didn't exercise at all. Like it just happened, but I blamed myself for everything. And a lot of times when we've experienced trauma, that is a wired in thought process because
Hmm.
it almost helps us control the narrative. If I can blame
Yep.
myself, I don't have to blame all the people out there and and that way I can control the narrative of
Yeah,
what.
that's something I used to do all the time.
Yeah,
Like I'd blame myself for crazy things. There's no way, like at all, that could be my fault.
right.
But I would internalize it and make that my fault. And I was responsible, for that. Like that used to be something I did all the time,
Yeah,
constantly.
yeah. And so for
Yeah.
the mamas that are navigating any level of trauma, one baby, five babies, kids, toddler, whatever, wherever you are, it is, please, really, it's really about renewing the mind. It's really that place of like capturing those thoughts of, because the thoughts create your reality and really literally wire your mind of how you see, think, and feel. And it's not about shifting it to toxic positivity. It's not going, I'm the worst, I should go eat worms. No, everything is fine. I'm blessed and highly favored. It
Mhm.
is a shift from um, gosh, I'll be curious and excited when I really start knowing that I'm worthy
Mm.
and understanding that. And I'm not going to entertain the ones that tell me I am the worst human being in the whole world and however that is
Nope.
communicated to your internal self. It's like, but I'm going to start renewing my mind, start rewiring my thought process enough so that your body and your mind don't reject it, but in a way that feels true and can connect to you, which will start rewiring your brain and your experience of yourself and your life.
Yeah, and it takes time for that
Oh,
because
yeah.
for so long you have been stuck in those patterns already. You've already decided all this stuff is truth
Mhm.
that you agree with how many times a day, like hundreds of times a day, probably. All these different thoughts that come in that are negative or condemning or taking on things that aren't yours, whatever the thing is. So then the process of renewing your mind and the process of walking in the truth and taking those thoughts captive, it takes a lot of time because for one, you don't even recognize them at first.
Right.
Like it just recognizing them takes a lot of effort. That at least for me, I remember like I had to stop and just really take effort. Wait, hold on. Was that thought? What was that thought?
Yes.
Was that the truth? Was that a lie? Is that something I want to agree with or not?
Yeah.
And it was a lot of processing time. But as you gradually start working on that, you can work on, more and more and more. And then it gets easier because then the new thoughts and the positive, the truth you actually get to start believing that, and that becomes your habit. And so then you just get more and more in that, and you still renew each day, but it's way easier because you're already in this pattern of not just like I don't like to just positivity because I don't think that's accurate, but of truth, of like of who you really are, of how you really are supposed to walk, how you're truly seen, and why you were really created. Like I tell mamas a lot, we often talk about, little children and these little babies. Oh, they are fearfully and wonderfully made, and they are precious and beautiful. Well, I'll go and look at a mom and be like, hey, guess what? You are too.
Yes.
Like that's the same for you. And that's harder for us to run with. Like it's easy for us to run with that with this precious little baby, but it's
Mhm.
not so easy for me to say I am. Madon is fearfully and wonderfully made. I am precious. That is it's some reason, especially I feel like those of us who are stuck in trauma in those negative thought patterns, and condemning was one of a big thing for me, like
Yeah.
all kinds of condemnation and shame. Um, that is really hard to think, can that actually be true?
Mm.
Like, am I precious? Does somebody see me as beautiful and glorious without expectation?
Mhm.
Um,
So good. I
so
love that
just
you tell your
a
mom that.
thought on that. I was already turned to Romans, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, nice. How perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is that one of the things that I think is important is like we look at our babies and go, they are fearfully and wonderfully made. And like you were saying, we are the same. And so a lot of times not a lie, I always tell my clients, you have everything inside of you that you need. It's already inside of you. You don't have to go like buy it, search it out. It's already there. It was knitted in you in your mother's womb, with intention and with careful consideration and beauty and power and all of those things. Like it's already in you. And so it's when that connecting to yourself, because especially with abuse and trauma, we were groomed to be to protect the abuser.
Mm-hmm.
However we were told, like I was told, do not tell anybody, or I will harm the people that you love.
Mm-hmm.
And I took on their pain. I took on their distorted view of whatever they thought love was and their sickness. And I carried that and took responsibility of it. And so it was part of my healing of like sorting those things out and going, this is not mine. This was never
Mm-hmm.
mine, although I was groomed to carry it for them. And so in that
Yeah.
process is like, and so all the thoughts that I would use to quote unquote protect myself of like, I'm bad, I'm stupid, my body is, only good for sex. It's all of those things. Even it was like sorting, kind of like deconstructing a pot of stew. It's like, okay, there's ingredients in here that aren't supposed to be in here. So I'm going to pull those out and
Mm-hmm.
hand it back to the person. And, with God, like never done it with the person because they are dangerous. And but it is that like handing all of those things back to where this is not mine to carry anymore. And then it is the process of going, and I have been wired and groomed to think this way. So how can I start capturing the thoughts? I call it what you talked about is like when you started capturing those thoughts, you're like, wait a second. And it's that I call it POP, POP. It's the power of pause. And it's, the downstairs part
Mm-hmm.
of our brain is the survival part of our brain. It's, the brain stem, the fight, flight, freeze, faint, fawn, fix, um, all the F words right down here. And they're designed for a purpose to keep us not dead. However, we're not designed to live in this place. And then we've got the
Mm-hmm.
midbrain, which is all about scratch the itch, the dopamine spikes. This is where addictions live. And I'm not just talking about sex, drugs, and country music. It's like, food, scrolling, doom scrolling, anything that like you're looking for the dopamine hits. But the power of the pause is all about you hear that thought. It's like, you are so stupid. I cannot believe you just did that. And sometimes they're so convincing because you did just make a mistake, right? Like you
Yep.
did something, like your baby just rolled off the bed and is on the ground, and you're like, I'm the worst mom ever, and it is this thing of like, hold on, you pause, you take a deep breath, and by doing that, you automatically connect to self and you move up to the upstairs part of your brain, and that's where life lives. That's the limbic
Mm.
system, the neocortex, and in the limbic system is all about connection. And you connect to self, and then connecting to God, and it's not some over spiritual like, oh God, duh, all that's like, hey God, that's it.
Yep.
And it's finding that place where it settles your soul, and you can have the fruits of the spirit, which are the love and the joy and the peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self control. Thank goodness self control is number 9. But it is that place of like, in trauma, we get so stuck downstairs in the survival. And that's how we've made it so far. But that's not where we're designed to live. And
Hmm.
in that pause and continuing to renew the mind and capturing the thoughts, capturing the things that are trying to shred you, even ones that you've agreed with and made up on your own, it's like, well, I'm going to just add another one, and in that shift and in that process, it literally changes your state, changes your nervous system. It changes all the epigenetics and the gene,
Everything. Oh my goodness.
everything, everything.
Yep.
It's so cool. It's just so cool.
Yeah, it's really amazing when you start doing that. That's awesome. I love that, Pops. I've not heard of that. So
Yeah,
I'm gonna write that down.
perfect. Yeah,
Um,
one of my it's I have a few of my teachings on the 4 levels of the brain.
well, that's
So
awesome.
yeah, thank you.
So, so the girls are growing up.
Mhm.
They're around 3 is where we left off, and you joined that group, and that helped to get you make some community,
Yes.
right? Like you needed community of other moms to be able to talk with each other and be real with each other and start connecting with other people to help pull you out of your space.
Mhm.
What happened after all of that?
So, um, did that came at 3, came to know the Lord, and but it wasn't like one of those. I mean, it was like a big aha moment, but I didn't like deep dive into church, anything like that. I One of the things is I was like 26 then. And so I was a fairly young mom. And in the area that I lived in, a lot of the moms were older. And so I was
Mhm.
like this immature. I felt like I was very immature. I know I was very immature, like this young. And I had just a couple of really close friends that just kind of pulled me under their wing, which I was so grateful for.
Mm.
Kind of, they've
Yeah.
had experience of being moms. They were just older and wiser and more mature. And so that really helped. But after when the girls turned 4, we ended up moving to Colorado. And one of the things that I've always said, because I've moved around a lot, born and raised in the Dallas Fort Worth or in Dallas. But then before I had the girls, I lived in Tennessee. I worked in Illinois for a while. Um, and so I traveled around, but it was more of like, can I just run from myself? And,
Mm.
what I've said, and I know you've probably heard this term before, but wherever you go, there you are. And,
Yep.
you can change your environment and it will change for a little while, but everything will eventually catch up. And you're going to
Yep.
start seeing the same patterns. And you're like, why? I finally moved away. I don't have to deal with that part of the family anymore. It's like, yeah, but wherever you go, there you are. If you don't do the work,
Yeah.
it follows you. And um, so moved to Colorado, lived there for 3 years, moved to Chicago for 1 year, Burr. my girls were 7 when we moved to Chicago, and I loved Chicago. We lived north of the city, but it was so cold. And so then I'm a Texas girl, and my then husband was still
Oh, that was
traveling.
a big change.
Yeah, and Colorado was great. Loved Colorado. We lived outside of Denver. It's cold, but it's a dry cold. It is different. It can be 7 degrees and you're just wearing a light jacket because the sun is so warm. But
Mm,
Chicago, not the same thing. So it's just been a year there, came back to Dallas, and that's when I really started. Again, not in those years, just pretty much survival, being a mom, still stay at home mom. And I loved doing that. But I was not working on any of my trauma. It was
mm,
still very much in my warehouse of boxes. We'll just keep that closed. But
mhm.
it eked out in places where, I was very disconnected. I used alcohol to numb, food to numb. If I could stay really busy, I would go through like highs and lows of shopping, things like that. And so just trying to live this like the Joneses life. And my then husband was still traveling all the time. And so like a lot of just me raising the girls by myself. He was home on the weekends. But so I don't have a whole lot of um what would you I didn't have a whole lot of understanding of how to raise kids.
Mm,
And it's like that whole I did the best I could with what I had. And we can say that for our parents, and there's still a place for responsibility.
right.
And
Yeah.
so I tried to read books. There was a book that I read when my girls were 3, How to Talk So Kids Will Listen, How to Listen So Kids
Mm.
Will Talk. Have you read that?
Uh-uh.
It was so helpful. Like, on just how do I do this? How do I do this well? And not overcompensate for what my parents didn't give me. But
Mm,
it's like that pendulum swing. So I knew enough of
mhm.
that, but I think there was just a disconnect for myself because of the trauma and just surviving. So we moved back to the Dallas area, actually the Fort Worth area in between by the airport, and um, start going to church. And I get really involved in church. I start doing all of the Bible studies, every Beth Moore Bible study I can get my hand on. We've got all these prayer groups and we've got our Sunday school class. But I was living a very compartmentalized life because I was doing that. But I was also playing tennis because I played tennis in high school. Um, I was playing on like 3 different leagues. And so have tournaments, matches, all of that. And
Whoa.
this group of girls, women, we'd go have 3 martini lunches after our tennis matches. And
Hmm.
and then, on Sundays and Wednesday nights, I'm doing all the church things. And so I'm living very compartmentalized lives and just again still trying to survive and thinking like I'm just doing the thing. I'm just doing the life. Here we go. At least I got Jesus, right? But I
Right.
was in so much pain. Like I was so unhappy and I was so shut down, and I could put on the smile on the outside, but inside I'm just like numb and confused, and things were not going well in my marriage, and just it was just hard. And but if I could stay busy enough, then I'm going to be okay.
Mm,
And I went to a couple of different conferences with just some healing prayer stuff. Um, and connecting to Jesus, that would bring up some of the trauma stuff, but it was so scary. It's like I cannot deal with this. Like I
yeah.
cannot have these memories. But when
Oh,
you
I
try,
know that one.
yeah, it's like when you try not to have them, they're like, "Hi." It's like the boxes somehow fall out of your storage unit, like, and they're loaded like with bombs. And when they fall out, like, and you're just like,
Yep.
your whole nervous system freaks out, everything. So went into that, but then in around 2009, my girls were 12, 13, somewhere around there, maybe a little bit before, maybe. Anyway, I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis,
Hmm.
and it shut my life down. I couldn't play tennis anymore. The medication that I was on, if you drink on it, like it will destroy your liver. And, I'm like, I don't think God makes people sick on purpose to wake you up. But I think when we do, uh, you know, what I understand with autoimmune diseases, this seems like a sidestep, but it's not. What I understand with autoimmune diseases is that a lot of people with trauma have them because an autoimmune disease, you have one. Okay.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. Ah, woohoo. What did you have?
Oh, I had a whole bunch of things. It's a whole list. You should go listen to Dr. Ben's podcast.
Okay, I will definitely do that. Yes, now I'm very
Yeah, huge
curious. Yeah.
list. One of them was a major tick disease, actually.
Mm.
But the Lord gave me complete healing.
Oh,
Once I was able to like deal with that trauma and heal from it, like completely heal from it,
yeah.
then my body came alongside and healed too. So,
Oh, it's so good. I love that.
yeah,
Oh, and it's so, and I'm sure you see it, but it is because trauma, people who have experienced trauma turn on themselves. So literally,
right.
it's an autoimmune disease is
That's
turning, your body turns on itself and attacks
that's
itself.
exactly it.
And so
Yeah,
it is literally what we're doing and what it does. And so in 2009, knocked me out and woke me up. And again, just I truly do not think God says, Polly has RA now,
no,
I
but
want her
he
to
does
wake up.
say he'll use those things for our good. So he'll turn it to be for our good. So if it was a wake up call for you, then he's using that for your good so that you will see, like, hey, this is not where I'm supposed to be. This is not how I'm supposed to live.
Yes, exactly. And it brought me to my knees, and not that I was unaware of the things that I was doing to myself during those times, but like the drinking, like I would want to stop, and I I couldn't, or I didn't. I wanted to, but I really didn't want to because it would numb me. And
Mm,
now I wasn't like blackout drunk kind of thing, but it was like, okay, this can take the edge off. And then I feel like crap
right.
day, but I still gotta do all the things and then go to church, right? And smile and act like everything's okay.
Hmm.
And so after that, the Lord really started speaking to me. It I probably actually started just really being able to hear him in a different way because I was more connected and I wasn't numbing the old ways. And we decided to start homeschooling our girls 7th and 8th grade. And I had a great community of people that were already doing that. And I just really felt like the Lord was like, 7th and 8th grade, we're going to homeschool. And then they can decide what they want to do afterwards. So when we did that, I started coaching volleyball for a homeschool athletic association. Then in 2014, sorry, 2010, excuse me, God God started speaking to me about reaching back out to the women in the sex industry. And I'm like, no, no, absolutely not.
Mm. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I'm not going back out into the clubs. I'm not, no. And he's so cute, and funny. And my thing was like, I am not sharing my story. Like I have worked my whole life to keep this story in a box. And I'm not bringing this out. And, what will people think about my girls? What will the church think about me? All these people, if they knew that I was a stripper and in the industry. And um, God's like, I got it covered. It's good. Like, I got you. And I'm like, finally back and forth arguing because I argue with God sometimes. we had
Me too.
yeah, we had a wrestle in the bush and it's like, "Rah," he won. But in the most beautiful way. But I said yes. And all of the things that I worried about never happened. It
Mm.
was incredibly embraced. I helped, I got to be a part, I started a ministry called We Are Cherished, and got to be a part of helping multiple women who had previously been in the sex industry, but never could talk to anybody because they were fearful of sharing their story. But
Hmm.
also uh, helping women get out if they wanted to. Like we never, because of the type of work we did, we never asked a woman to leave the industry because once you remove choice, you remove love.
That's
And
right.
and so they got to choose, but they still got to come to group because like you're not going to be ostracized just because you're still currently doing that, but come and taste and see.
Mm.
And we'll walk alongside you in whatever part of the life you're in. And so I did that for several years. And then in 2014, my life turned upside down and I ended up getting separated and then having a divorce. And that was devastating and very
Mm.
confusing. And like, again, that God, what the heck? Like, what the heck? And, but it was, I know what the heck now. Like it all makes sense and brings me peace and grateful for the journey, even though it was very difficult. But all along those times, I didn't just start a ministry. I had been really working on my healing then as well, getting to my knees, doing healing work, working with the women, learning more about how to navigate their healing journey, including mine, doing lots of
Hmm.
counseling. Then got to start doing EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing, EMDR. Yes. For those who may not know what that is. And it's just bilateral movement that helps rewire the brain, but you get to go through your story while you do it. That was just the hardest part. Have you ever done any EMDR?
I've done it a couple of times and then I said never again.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was too much. I have a lot of repressed stuff and I don't want to know it.
Yeah.
I thought originally that I needed to be able to know it in order to heal from it. But
Mhm.
then the Lord showed me, no, you don't.
Yeah.
I can just, it can be gone. It can be done.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's
yeah,
so
thank the
good.
Lord for that.
Yeah. It was, I had EMDR is an art and somebody
Hmm.
can know how to do it. And like the woman that was, anyway, it was really great for me. And the woman that was my therapist, she was brilliant and so helpful and so kind. It was
Oh,
interesting.
good.
She wasn't a believer, but she honored
Yeah.
my belief and my faith. And but it was, and we'd invite God in and all that, but she was an incredible part of my healing process, and especially after the divorce, um, and navigating all of that, just really learning how to heal. So in between that time and then getting married to Bob and like how do we do our ministries together, I laid the We Are Cherished down. It's now some other people have picked it up and are doing it under a different name, but it is it's been quite the journey in these last several, like 5 years. Bob and I have been married 7.5 years now. And then really in the last 5 years, it's probably the safest I have felt. Because one of the things
Mm.
about healing is that like, if you don't feel safe, it's very difficult to heal. It's
Yep.
not impossible. It's not impossible. It's just it's a little bit harder because
Yep.
your nervous system is in protection mode and it's
Yeah.
usually on high alert, trying to protect. And healing is your body feels weak while you're doing that, so it's not protecting, if that makes sense. I'm not saying you are
Yeah.
weak. It's just letting your guard down, being vulnerable. If a saber-tooth tiger is trying to eat you, it's not the
And
time to meditate and
do
connect.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but that is then, just all the layers of all the healing. And then really the last several years just have been really beautiful in the healing part. So I love getting to help men and women just find wholeness, connection, and getting to do that from a place of wholeness and connectedness has been
Yeah.
quite lovely.
Oh, that's awesome. I love it. So what street are you involved right now?
Will you say that one more time? The mic just cut out.
Sure. So what's your focus right now?
So my focus right now is shifting into a health initiative, actually. Think differently about health. It's called Tada. And I just ran a beta group. But part of the trauma for me was also body dysmorphia and hating my body.
Mhm.
I never loved my body, and I turned on it and attacked it all the time.
I think that comes along with most trauma that I'm
Yes.
aware of that because there's that self-condemnation.
Mhm.
And that's what comes along with it because there must be something wrong with my body. And so then I agree with that and I come along and then daily I'm talking about how, ugly I am, or it may be the opposite. Oh, I'm just too, the Lord made me with too many curves or
Mhm.
whatever. It's always something that is not that you're not happy with your body because it probably, helped impart of the trauma, as in helped perpetuate the
Yeah.
trauma at some point. And so then that clings onto immediately there. Or somebody made a comment at some point in time that you thought, oh, that's why. Okay, so it's my fault.
Yeah.
And so then it's that again, self condemnation, self shame, whatever it is that you cling on to. And so you have this body issue. And I mean, I think I don't know the statistics on it, but I would say almost every woman, specifically with trauma, has some type of body issue.
Yes. I would say that percentage would be very high, and I'm sure there's a
Hmm.
percentage out there, but it would be incredibly high, just like the autoimmune diseases that's so high within
Yep.
um, that group of trauma, people who've experienced high trauma or any trauma. Like but again, it's like you turn on yourself. And so one of the things, I we thought about this and branded this 2 years ago, that I was still not in a place of alignment with myself to really put it out there. And it's it's really, I have been through 5 million diets and the whole yo-yo, and I always hated my body. I'd lose a lot of weight, I'd gain weight, I'd lose weight, I'd gain weight, all of that. But the thing that I noticed is that it was several years ago, I hit the highest weight. I think it was 6 years ago. I hit the highest weight that I'd ever been. And I'm like standing in the mirror. I'm like, oh God, you're so fat. I hate you. I can't believe you got this way. I'd look at pictures. I'm like, ugh, I hate me,
Mhm.
all that. And I'm like, I need to lose weight and I got to do this. And I did another diet thing to lose weight and I lost some weight and I'd still look in the mirror and go, oh, I hate me. And it was like, wait a second. It it seems that it doesn't matter what size I am, I hate me. And
Yep.
like I've been a size 0 and I've been the largest I've ever been. And I hated me. And it's like, okay, so if I can't love myself at my smallest, and I can't love myself at its biggest, and I can't love myself anywhere in between, it's not the weight that this problem. It's
Yep.
my heart. It's how I see myself. It's how I turn on myself. And so really to and think differently about health is not about diet. It is anti-diet, really, because it's renewing your mind and your nervous system and everything that we've talked about, even just kind of at a high level with the 4 levels of the brain, your internal dialogue, moving from dependence to independence,
Mhm.
talking about your family of origin. These are things that when you shift here, your body will follow along. When you
Yep.
heal, no longer do you want to use food or alcohol or starving and purging to numb you and get that midbrain scratchy itch in your in your midbrain. It's like I am living fully, truly connected and and that aligns me with all the parts of how God has created me, but then how my body is created, and then I fall in love with myself.
Mm,
And
yes.
then my body follows along because I'm not going to give it crap because I love my body.
Right.
And so it's a right now it's a 7-week course, and the website will be up right now. It's what are we, September 26th
September.
today, it's the 27th. And it'll be out in mid-October of 2024. And so
Awesome.
I'm so excited about it. And I've had the men and women that have gone through it these first 6 weeks, just like big shifts. It's a wonderful community of people just really navigating. And it's not just about trauma, but most people have, like, especially when you start looking at your family of origin, you're like, oh, there's some belief systems around food and myself that stem from my family of origin. And so it's been a really fun journey. So that's what I'm doing. Moving into, I'm retiring from my coaching practice, but going into a different kind of coaching world, if that makes sense. So
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
yeah,
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that work.
yeah,
That's great. And I think that lines up perfectly, like the direction, is awesome.
yeah.
Because I don't know, I was just thinking about like I've been trying to speak to young girls about that. I have three daughters.
Okay.
And they're all teenagers, and trying to speak to them like, oh, you're so beautiful, and all that. And it's just it's hard, and I know for myself to believe those words that somebody is saying to you. Like, but am I? Because everything around me tells me that I'm not. Tells me
Right.
that I'm not enough, tells me that I'm not skinny enough, that my cheeks are too big, that my whatever the case might be, our world tells us that it's not enough, whatever the thing is. And being able to go against that and
Mhm.
instead say, no, I am firmly standing on the fact that I know that I am beautiful, that I was created beautifully, that I am precious, you know, and truly believe it. There's a lot of countering that you have to do there to
Yeah.
get to that place.
Yes.
And that's just for a, a space that's just from our culture and not necessarily from somebody who's had trauma. And
Right.
so when you add our culture and what it's saying about women specifically, but I know there's a lot about men too. But since we're speaking to women, I'm like, what the culture is telling us is that we're never enough. We're never good enough. Our body never looks good enough. It's always something else. We then add on top of that trauma. And then most of the times, the highest percent of trauma for women is sexual trauma. And that goes along with our bodies as well. And that they are not either they cause this thing or so now I have that self-hatred, that condemnation. And it's just like, wow, a double whammy. So being able to come out of that and recognize those lies, recognize, all of those things and be able to start walking in the truth and then truly like believe it to your core to counter those negative thoughts and actually believe when you look in the mirror, I am beautiful.
Mhm.
That I mean, it's we've all been there. Like I'll give a really silly example. At least I'll say silly, but maybe nobody else thinks it's silly. But I when I was really sick, I had to have some teeth removed. And so I realized that I would not truly smile in pictures because
Mhm.
I don't have tooth. Isn't that funny? Yeah, and then so I would realize that I would only partially smile in
Mhm.
pictures. And then when I would look at the pictures, I'd be like, you're not even fully smiling. And then a picture where I would let my guard down and I would smile fully, I would see the blank spot
Mhm.
and be like, oh man. Right? And so no matter what, each direction, I was upset about my smile. But everybody around me doesn't think that.
Mhm.
I know. I would have people be like, look, you're not even fully smiling in that picture because they didn't see what I saw.
Yeah.
It was just me that saw it. So trying to, get past that and be like, well, I don't care. I'm still beautiful and wonderful.
It's like we look for anything to point out
Uh,
our imperfections. Isn't it odd that we wouldn't look for the things that are so beautiful about us? It's like, oh, there's that imperfection. There's that. Oh gosh, I have a zit. It's like, how can I be an adult and having a zit? It's like, oh yeah, okay, well, maybe that's just information that my hormones are off balance and I'll just take
there you
care of that.
go.
But
Oh
it's like
yeah.
it's the tooth is like now it's a memory of the fact that you have overcome your illness. And so you get to look at it now and go, yeah, it's like a scar here. I've got from a snowmobile accident that I had two plates and the scars will always be there. But it is a memory that I've overcome the pain. And
Yeah.
my C-section scar, I have said actually from the very beginning, I'm like, this is the most beautiful scar in the world on me that I get to carry because it's where my daughters came out of. It's like, and they are here and they're alive and they are thriving and they're beautiful and amazing. And one of them, mama, got two little boys, and the other one's about to get married. And so it is just like this. I'm just like, this is the most beautiful scar ever. And even when I've hated my body, I've loved my scar. And
Oh.
because it has memory, so we can look at our stretch marks and it's like, okay, these are beautiful. Do I want an ocean on my stomach? Maybe not, but I have it and I'm going to
But I got to
celebrate.
house life.
Yes, it has life. Yes. And so it
Mm.
is that like reframing it. And again, not in a toxic positivity way, but in that part of your brain, that upstairs part that just where you're settled and you're at peace with yourself. And it's literally rewiring and just saying thank you for my body. Thank you for the parts of me that sometimes I may not be the happiest about it, but I'm okay and I am healing and I am in process. And and so it is a process for all of us. Like we're still in it. And
We're all
but
at different stages,
yeah.
for sure. And we'll even think like I'll say for myself, you'll think like, yeah, that's all like completely done. And the Lord has given all this healing. And then there'll be a minor thing that comes up. And I'm like, I can't believe I thought like that again. you know? And then
Yeah.
as you go back, that's why I love that Paul said in Romans that, the renewing of the mind. It's not
Yes.
you renewed it and you're done. It's a
Right.
it's a renewal. And that daily renewal, happens. And that's good for us because it's good practice, and it's also, I feel like, good because it's good reminder when we're talking to others to help them, because we're in positions to be able to speak truth to other women about those situations. And I feel like for me, it's a good reminder when I'll have a thought like that again. I'm like, oh no, you're done with that. You don't think
Yeah.
like that anymore.
Yeah.
It's a reminder like that might be where that person's coming from in that situation to really help. So I mean, I love what you just said. I think that's just some beautiful words, and especially for any mamas right now that are postpartum or anyone, just thinking about those scars and those stretch marks. And, if you have a little extra around the middle, like I do right now, like, hey, that middle housed life. And that
Yes.
is a great thing, that we need that layer of protection. What else would you think that maybe some advice that you'd like to give listeners while you have their ear?
Hmm. Hmm. um One of the things, especially just with your audience and being mamas and navigating trauma, and for whoever else is listening in, but it is it's it's important to pause, because survival can be just nonstop. And it's like you are probably maybe sleep deprived, or maybe your kiddo is going through some stuff. And but that pause, even if it's going outside barefooted, standing in the grass in the sunshine for 5 minutes, make the time. I remember both of my girls would be little babies in the house and crying, and I've done all I could, and I would go sit on the front porch and just cry. Like, I'm like, oh gosh, and I would just cry and get it all out, take a deep breath, and go back in the house and take care of my girls.
Mm,
And so, but don't let circumstances force you to have to do that. It is, consider making it a daily intention where you're like, I am intentionally going to do this 5 minutes, even if the kids are running around naked in the house and one of them just peed on the couch, and you're like, I'm gonna just go stand in the sunshine for 3 minutes. They can't burn it down in 3 minutes, right? Like, or just pull them all outside and let them pee outside, and you'll be fine. And it's
there
like
you go.
that. Give yourself just like be really intentional to pause. And when you pause, there's different things you can do, but consider moving like all the things that are like churning down here. Picture, like what I said earlier, picture that downstairs part of your brain pausing, taking a deep breath, just breathing out. You might need to do a couple of those just to regulate and literally visualize yourself moving up into the upstairs part of your brain.
Mm,
And this is where oxytocin lives. Dopamine, like the whole world is all of, like everything that is assaulting us on a daily basis is all about dopamine. Every ad,
mm-hmm.
every store, every post, all the things, assault, assault, assault here. And so it is that breathing and choosing not to live from here, because choice is so important and powerful. Moving up to here and settling, and taking that deep breath, connecting to self, and then you can just say, hi, God.
Mm,
And you don't have to go any further. Like you can say, is there anything you want to say to me today? Or just say, hi, God, and then open your eyes outside and see what you see with new lenses. And
mm.
treasure that, because it could be a caterpillar on the ground, or it could be your kid picking a mushroom and that you don't want them to eat, but it's like, don't put that in your mouth, but it's so cute. It's like, or a squirrel or a
Mm-hmm.
butterfly, whatever. it's it's look for the little treasures that are actually like serendipity moments that are gifts just for you, and then
Mm,
pull those in and treasure it. um and those, as those start rewiring your mind, the old thoughts that may try to pop in, it's like, no, like you said, I'm not going to entertain that. And sometimes there's a place to go, I wonder where that's coming from. Whose voice is that? Like, is that mine? Is that on
mm-hmm.
the inside of me? Is it on the outside of me? It's like, there are times to navigate the lie. um and in those moments, it's like, okay, I'm not going to agree with that right now. And I'm going to
Yeah.
connect the treasure and the gift that I have and say, thank you, God. Or just, hi, God, and connect with myself, and then take a deep breath and go about my day.
Yeah.
Do you have time for me to share just one more?
Oh,
Yeah,
I've got all the time you want. I would love
sweet.
it.
So one of the things I think is really helpful is scientists, thought people, they all say 90% of our lives we live in an unconscious state.
Mm,
Like we wake up, we shuffle, we turn off our snooze, or we hit our snooze 3 times, we shuffle to the bathroom, we brush our teeth, we pee, we go to the coffee maker, we get the kids up, we make breakfast, we could do all of that in our sleep. Like, I don't know if you've
oh
ever
yeah.
driven somewhere and you,
Oh, forgot that I drove there?
yeah,
Oh
you're
yeah.
like, I
I'm
hope
on the
I
road all the
didn't,
time.
yeah, you're like, I hope
I'm
I
like,
didn't
I'm
blow
glad
it.
I made it here safely, Lord, but I don't really remember going through that town or that town, but yay, I'm here.
Yes, and I didn't get a ticket. So
Yeah.
clearly
So
I
there
did
we
good.
go.
Nobody got creamed, and we're all good.
Oh
But
yeah, all the
we're
time.
we live in an unconscious state, and sometimes that's protection because trauma can seem overwhelming. However,
Right.
at night, one of the things in renewing your mind is right before you go to sleep. You're like laying in bed, and it's like, okay, one of my favorite neuroscientist guys, Dr. Dispenza, he says, um, like we are so used to rehearsing the things of the past. And
Mm,
so we go over our minds before we go to sleep. Oh, I did this. You're so dumb. Why did you do that? And you rehearse that. And a lot of times you rehearse that throughout the day as well. And so shifting that, because God is giving you dominion and authority, like he is in you, you get to have that, take it and
yep.
create it and have the energy to shift it. And it's like, I'm no longer going to rehearse the things of the past. Who am I going to be tomorrow? So when the kid pees on the sofa or takes a marker to the wall, and it's like, you know, today when they did that, like I lost my mind. I got so mad and I yelled and, or I just, oh, forget it. And I just walked out, all of that. It's like, who do I want to be today or tomorrow?
Mm,
And lay down and go, I want to be connected. I want to be consciously aware of who I am, who my kids are. It doesn't mean my kids aren't going to still do hard stuff where I'm like frustrated, but rehearse that.
I love
And
that.
and then in the morning, wake up before you get out of bed. And it takes just a minute or so to do. Sometimes it can take longer, contingent on how far, but rehearse it again. And literally that sets you up for a beautiful day. And where you're not living in an unconscious state, but where you're
Yeah.
choosing to live consciously aware. And it doesn't mean you're not going to slip back into
Right. Of
unconscious.
course.
However, when you start doing it more and more and more, like you keep pulling yourself in. It's like teaching your kids how to chew with their mouths closed or teaching your kids how to sit up straight. It's like you have to keep telling them, like, hey, you know, please chew with your mouth closed, or don't talk when you're eating, like food's falling out. It's like, but it's like you have to keep pulling them in, and not because they're bad, they just need some reminder. So it's the same thing for self, is literally pulling them in, pulling you in, and each time you do that, it rewires your nervous system, thought process, how you experience yourself, how you experience the world, and you get to take authority and dominion and create your new reality.
I love it. I love that. Yeah, I keep thinking about Paul talking about it's not that I look back, but that I look forward and I press towards the call.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking of that, just like I don't look back. I used to be, and I know it's a major, uh response that people who have had trauma do is that you rehash all the things immediately. As soon as a conversation is over, in the middle of the conversation, all the things, you're rehashing how you did it wrong, right? Shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't have done that. And like that used to be like a constant for me. It's so exhausting.
It's
It used to
exhausting.
be a constant that I would do that all the time. But don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
For one, I'm more prayerful and pause more in conversations with people so that I'm not just like offhandedly saying things. But for two, yeah, oh well, I messed up. Yep. I would have liked to said that differently, but I didn't. So
Yeah.
next time maybe I'll say it differently.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that simple, but yet it's so profound because it makes such a difference. Because when I get stuck again in that loop of, hey, I did it wrong again, and I should have done it like this, I should have done it like that, then you're going the complete wrong direction. So I love that being intentional and conscious about, hey, nope, that didn't go the way I wanted it to do. But tomorrow, if that happened again, this is the way I want to do it. And this is the intent that I'm going to give for tomorrow. And yeah, and I love that you just said that a few minutes ago about, when you took that pause and you wait. So maybe it's in the morning, and in the evening before bed, you're taking that pause to think that it's not, and I like to just be like, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Just, thank my body for working well today. Thank you, Lord, for putting me in the place where I am at the moment. But I love that and the just hi,
Yeah.
hi, hi.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's me. Let's talk a moment, I love that because I think people get confused a lot of times about prayer and relationship with the Lord and staying connected and think it's this some big because we've put it in this churchy box that this holy thing in this holy place and then we do it this way and say it that way and this all that. that's not connection with
Right.
the Lord. That's not connection with my creator and me having relationship with him. Relationship with him is living every day with him in communion. And
Yeah.
that's who I was created to be. For one, if he is abiding in me, then
Mhm.
he's part of me.
Yes.
And me staying connected, just like with a partner, like we've got to talk throughout the day, whether it's a quick text, hi, I love you, hope your day's going well, or whether it's a sit down with a cup of coffee and we're like pouring things out and discussing our week and whatever the thing is. We
Yes.
have sometimes moments where we're just together and we're not talking, and we have other moments where we're both having this major conversation. Well, that's relationship with the Lord too. It can
Yes.
be just us being in quiet together, me driving down the road, or me trying to go to sleep and I'm just saying like, "Hey, thank you for this day. Thank you, this happened. Thank you that my daughter's accident that she was in earlier this week was not horrific and it was minor and she is fine and it's just the vehicle that's gone."
Right.
Like things like that. I mean, there's major things and there's minor things. Hey, thanks for helping me walk in love when my kid, spilled my coffee all over me.
Yeah.
Thanks for helping me to respond with a hug.
Yeah.
Just things like that. I think it's just that's that connection. That's staying in relationship and that helps us make those conscious decisions like you're
Yeah.
talking about. That helps us to be very intentional with our time and with with the moments that we're given. None of us are guaranteed tomorrow.
Right.
So that being thankful for today and being thankful for the position that I'm in at this moment and the place I'm in at this moment, maybe it's not the best. Maybe I'd prefer to be somewhere else. Maybe I would like for different things to be happening, but to still be thankful that, hey, I'm here. And Lord, tomorrow is going to be a new day and I have new opportunities tomorrow, and being able to walk in that. It makes me excited. It makes me excited for the day
Yes.
instead of, yep, it's another day. It's going to be
Another
another
day. Yeah.
Friday and I'm going to be very busy. That can be very dragging. But
Yeah.
to really be like, hey, this day, maybe didn't go the way I wanted, but I thank you for it. Help
Mhm.
me see the things that like next time I'm going to respond, out of love
Yeah.
or whatever the situation might be. And I look forward to what tomorrow brings because I don't know what it's going to bring. I know what my plans are, but I have no clue what the day's actually going to look like.
Right. Yeah, it's like, I'm going to plan it out, but we'll just see.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, for real. I'm like,
Yeah.
I make a schedule, but it's all penciled.
Right. Yes. One of my favorite NLP presuppositions is there's no such thing as failure, only feedback.
I love it.
Everything is information.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and when we can shift our thought processes into like, I can't screw this up. Like,
Yep.
doesn't mean I'm not going to make mistakes, but mistakes is actually a learning
That's
a
all it
place I
is.
can learn. And so curiosity is the antidote to victim and blaming and judgment. And so it's that, we catch ourselves judging ourselves, complaining, playing. It's like, oh, my life sucks, or everybody around me it's their problem. And, if they were just better, I would be okay. And it's that shift to take responsibility for self
Oh yeah.
and and then go, and I'm curious because curiosity will change your internal state. And it curiosity can't happen in the downstairs part of your brain, because if you're being chased by a saber-tooth tiger and you're trying not to die, curiosity will kill you. And so it is
Mhm.
that when you get to pop and move up to the top part of your brain, curiosity brings healing and an openness and in receiving. And so the same with gratitude, just like that whole thankful, it's like having that gratitude. It's like, okay, I've had a really bad day and I just saw a squirrel like running with some weird thing in its mouth, and I did. And it's like, "Oh, that's cute. God, thanks." It's like,
Yeah.
it's like just those little bitty moments that aren't little. They're interruptions that are really sweet. And it's like it's those things that you'll continue to see them grow bigger and bigger, and all the other stuff that's just kicked your bum the whole time is like those grow smaller. And the other gratitude and curiosity, and it's like, I'm not a failure. It's all information. It's
Mm.
just information. And I'm
Yep.
going to learn about myself and be curious about it. And then life is going to start looking different.
Mm. Yeah, because your perspective changes. So
Yes.
much is about our
So
perspective.
much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And how we see ourselves is gonna just it's gonna change inwardly and outwardly how we are with everyone. It's both.
Yeah.
Because if we can see ourselves from the correct perspective, wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a whole new ball game.
It really is. And it's so worth playing it.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
yeah.
It's
Learn the sport,
amazing.
get out there and play it because it's so fun.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, thanks so much, Polly, for coming on the podcast. I'm just so grateful
For
to you. And I know that it's going to speak a lot of things to a lot of different women. And so I just thank you for that. And those listening, I'll make sure and have some links to your new initiative that you're putting forward, Polly. I'm looking forward to that. Ta-da! So I'll make sure we have links, and then when it's up, I'll make sure that we do some social media posting for everyone so they can go check it out.
Thank you. And just real quick, a
And
shameless little plug, because whether this
oh
is
no, plug.
video or, but I do have a book and it's called Cherished, Shattered Innocence, Restored Hope. And it has a study guide in it. And after each chapter, it's my story, but we all have our own story and it's walking you through your own cherished story. So by the time you do the journal prompts after each chapter, you have the foundations of your cherished story. And then if you wanted to do a study guide or a small group with it, there's like study guide questions that are not as deep, that are more appropriate for group settings in the
Gotcha.
back. And so, but it is, and I will definitely send you the link for that book because you can get it on Amazon,
Thank
but you
you.
can also get it on our website.
Yeah, that would be absolutely great. I forgot I was gonna mention that book, so I'm glad I haven't got to read it yet. But it's on my list.
Perfect.
So I absolutely want to get it. And the other book, I think others have heard me talk before on previous podcasts about Think Differently, Live Differently. I
Yes.
highly encourage that book as well.
That's such a
And
good book.
honestly, I think Differently, Lead Differently is actually my favorite.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
If we're
Okay.
talking about both of those, because each one of us, we're all leaders.
That's right.
We are, and I think it's really important. But
Have you
I'm
read
really
Think
looking forward
Differently,
to
Learn Different?
Cherished.
Add Learn Differently, the Think Differently,
Oh,
Learn.
whoa, whoa, what?
Yeah. There's a third one. So there will be a fourth one. It'll be Think Differently, Love Differently, which Bob and I will co-write.
Oh,
But
oh my
yeah, we're
goodness.
excited
I'm
about
looking
that
forward to
one.
that.
But the Learn Differently is all about thinking and communicating, and it is a brilliant book.
Oh
And I know
my,
I'm
I need
a bit
that.
biased, but
Oh,
my
well, that's
husband's
okay. I'm all
pretty
for it.
fantastic. Yeah, he's a great communicator and writer, and
He is. I
yeah,
agree. Yeah, that's amazing.
yeah. So
Yeah, well, I am that's going to be down on my list now. So both of your books, both of those. So I'm really thankful. I'm in the process of writing a book myself too, but it's I don't know how when that's gonna the
woo,
Lord has to create the time.
yes,
I'll get a
yes,
little bit here and there, but then it's just such a busy season, which I'm extremely thankful for.
yes.
But I just look forward to when that's going to happen. So
Right.
I might have to talk to you a little bit about that process.
I would love to
Um,
talk to you about it because yeah, it's a yeah. There's so many different ways to write. Yeah.
yes, yeah, so many for sure. Well, we'll make sure we put a link in the show notes. Everybody check those out, and I'll make sure we post some on Instagram. Make sure to check out her book Cherished. We'll put a link down for that. And is that on Audible? Do you know?
It's on Audible. So the second edition
Woo!
is on Audible. So the third one, I've not re-recorded it. There's some new
Gotcha.
information in the third one, but the second one definitely it doesn't have the questions, or do I have it in print? Anyway, I don't know. You'll have to go look.
I
But
will go look.
yeah, the third one includes my husband. Um, and just some different stories of things that I've learned. But the second one is on Audible, and it's yeah, it's there's just a little bit of
Well,
a
if
difference.
you're like me and on the road a lot, So I love to be able to listen to audiobooks. So
Yes,
yay, I'm really excited to hear that
perfect.
it's there and it's available. So if you have any questions, listeners, hit me up, let me know, and I'll see if I can get you answers. I want to thank everybody for listening today. And I really want to thank Polly for coming on. I really appreciate you.
Thank you for
And I love what the Lord's done in your life. It's absolutely outstanding and really looking forward to what's to come in the
yes,
future. All these
ditto.
new things going on.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for having me.